Hey folks, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lachlan Nicholson, and I'm a qualified journalist and writer born and living in South Africa. I have lived in South Africa my entire life, and as I say, I'm a qualified journalist. And so today, in this video, what I want to do is to clarify some misconceptions around the current situation here in South Africa as of Wednesday, the 14th of May, 2025. This video will not feature any fancy editing or any cuts because I want it to be as raw and as honest as possible. Furthermore, if the way I speak or the way my body moves seems strange to you, that is because I have a physical disability known as quadriplegic cerebral palsy, which confines me to a wheelchair and affects the way I move and speak. So, on to the main topic of this video, because as I say, I am a qualified journalist. I'm going to give you some of my history so you know why I feel confident in speaking on this subject. My professional history includes having worked for a local community newspaper group called the Fever Group, which at the time it operated, because it is now defunct, was owned by Media 24, one of South Africa's largest publishing houses. I have also worked for a company called the South African Community Action Network, or SACAN for short. For those of you who don't live in South Africa, the best way I could describe what SACAN does is that it functions as a sort of private 911, working in conjunction with police and emergency services to deal with crime and medical emergencies. In the course of working for SACAN in particular, as their communications manager, one of the things that I dealt with was farm murders, because SACAN is very involved in the rural communities in South Africa as well as the urban ones. And so I can tell you firsthand that farm murders do happen and that they are a problem. I feel the need to state something so obvious because if you only listen to the official narrative peddled by the South African government, our president would have you believe that farm murders are not a serious issue and that when they do happen, they are never targeted against white farmers. But that's simply a lie. It is untrue to say that white farmers are never targeted with undue violence or disproportionate brutality, because they are. I have worked on cases myself, the details of which, were I to share them, would horrify you in terms of the violence, bloodshed, and brutality. So there are a few things about the general atmosphere in South Africa at the moment that I want to clarify. As it stands, there is no genocide in South Africa. Genocide being very strictly defined as one large group, in this case black South Africans, systematically exterminating whites. That is not currently happening, and it is not currently being legally sanctioned by the state. There are, however, very influential politicians both inside the African National Congress and the Economic Freedom Fighters, two of the main political forces in South Africa, in which its politicians use openly genocidal language in public. The most common example of this would be EFF leader Julius Malema, who routinely chants, "Kill the farmer, kill the Boer," in stadiums full of people at campaign rallies. So I want to just restate, to be absolutely clear, at this point, on Wednesday, the 14th of May, 2025, there is no active genocide in South Africa, but that could change very quickly and without warning. The other aspect of this that I want to clarify, because there's a lot of misunderstanding around land in this country. There is currently no large-scale program mandated by the state to seize land from white farmers. Yet. I say yet because late last year, the government passed legislation in which, or under which rather, it would be permitted to seize any land it deemed in the public interest without compensation. So there is a very clear move by our government to erode property rights, particularly in regard to white South Africans, because our government, particularly the ANC, because, well, I suppose I should explain this too for context. For most of South Africa's democratic history, the ANC has been the sole ruling party, relying on its legacy as the party that brought apartheid to an end. Until very recently, it had sole discretion in governing this country. But in the last national elections, the ANC lost so much ground in terms of voter popularity that it was forced to enter into what is known as a government of national unity with several other political parties. So what that means in real terms is that the ANC can no longer simply force through anything it wants, just as and when it pleases. It actually has to engage with other political parties and negotiate terms so that legislation can be properly passed. Now, in terms of what it's actually doing, many of those within the ANC are still trying to govern as though they are the sole arbiters of the law in this country, even though they are not. But how this relates to land is that I know that a lot of Americans believe that there are already large-scale land grabs happening which have been sanctioned by the state. At this point, that is not currently true, but it is true that because of the recently passed Land Expropriation Act, the government does technically have the legal right to do so. So I suppose, in order to summarize this, the two things I should say is that there is no white genocide happening here in South Africa, and there are no large-scale Zimbabwe-style land seizures happening either. Both of those situations, as I say, are subject to change. But I believe that if we are going to talk about this issue, we should at least try to be honest about the situation as it stands. I hope that you find this video helpful in some way. Look after yourselves, take care of each other, and for now, farewell.